Hello, today I'm going to show you how to use the next page or a scraper, a static scraper that uses a paging mechanism. So the first thing we're going to do is we've got a website here called abacusconsulting.co.uk. So the first thing we need to do is we need to find out how the jobs are listed. So it looks like if we click all live jobs, we get a web page URL up here, and we can see we've got a bunch of jobs here. And then if we go to the bottom, we can see here we've got a paging mechanism. Now, luckily for us, this looks like a fairly basic paging. There's no ASP.NET, no dynamics on the paging, it's all static, so this should be fairly easy to get. So let's get started creating a scraper for this. So it's Abacus Consulting, so that will go in A in here. There are a couple of ways you can do a website with paging. Today I'm just going to show you the basic one. Inside the scraper base class there is two methods you can override. One is the next page URL, and the other one is template is last web page. So you override those two. So obviously once we get to the last, we need to write some XPath which will work out when we're on the last page, and that will return the boolean there which will stop the main page loop. But we'll get to that in a couple of moments. So let's just quickly write this bit up. Write the interface first. And as you can see in the base scrapers down here, we're going to go for the static job board static listing, which comes with paging mechanism in there. So let's go ahead and implement this. So first thing as usual is just to do the really basic single entry and a list of URL seeds to return. So we return a new URL seed, and we pass in the initial URL which the loop is going to use. That'll be our starting point. Now the next thing we want to do is return a mechanism to scrape the job listings in here, so the loop knows which page to go to, so we can do that quickly. So if I bring this down here, so if we inspect using Google Chrome's inbuilt inspection, we can go in here, just take one example, and then we can see that all the job listing URLs are contained quite nicely within inside a div that has a class job row, then a H2 element, and then the listing itself. So if we use the XPath tool, test it in here, and we can go div anywhere that has class is equal to job row, then H2A, and then you can see in here this gives us our results, and then highlighted in yellow is everywhere where the XPath is matched, and that looks perfect. So let's go ahead and put that in there. So I'll just, as I said before, I've got a bunch of code samples to quickly use it, so let's just go ahead and copy and paste this bit here, and then just replace that. So we need to add the using statement from the module, so which gives us, so you can see here there's I've written some extension codes which you can go and have a look at yourself. So it extends onto an HTML node, which will, using try get link, will basically all that will try and do is try and get the href attribute from a node. So this is quite useful when we're looping around anchor nodes. And then basically the dot is just basically saying it's at this current level. So we're getting the link. When you use dot in XPath, you're basically, it's the current directory. So let's go ahead and add this modules using statement in. Just have a quick read for that, so you can see try get link. Have a quick look at that yourself if you want. And then basically what it does is it gives us, sometimes websites will use relatives paths for the jobs and sometimes they won't. So you can see here this is using an absolute path, but sometimes it will cut this bit out and it will just have payroller Hartford. So in this case we don't need to add a prepend, but sometimes we would need to prepend their website that's using relative path. So that gives us the initial page, this gives us the listing URLs. So what we want to do now is get into the paging mechanism. So you can see here we've got two methods with regards to paging. So this one here, as it states, is basically what the job board loop will do. It will use this as the initial seed. It will basically get all listings using this code here from this web page. Once it's finished all the listings, the job board loop will say, okay, is this the last web page? If it isn't, it will then say, okay, well give me the next page URL to scrape, and then it will go around and do this bit again until eventually this returns false that we're on the last web page. So first thing we want to do is we want to say, okay, let's implement the code that will get the next page URL. So if we open up the website again, so usually sometimes you'll have a piece of text saying next, sometimes it'll have a piece of text using the two arrows. So in this case it's the double arrow. So look, you can see here we've got a bit of luck here. We've got an attribute which says rel next, which is fantastic, which means we can use that. So if we go into here, let's get the parent container just to narrow it down. So you can see there now, if we do that we get all the anchors, but what we want is we want where it has the relative attribute of next. So as you can see, that's brilliant. So we've got that. So now what we want to do is from the node, which is the document node, we want to try get link using the XPath and just double check that it's using absolute path. Which it is, and you can see there that will give us the href of page 2, which will be the next page because we're on page 1. So that's it. You just return that. Then we need to implement the is last web page. So if we go to the last web page, and then what we can do is we can see here on the last web page, we can see that there is no link with relative next. So if we go to 7, it's there, as you can see. But if we go to 8, which will be the last web page, it isn't there. So we can just test that using the XPath helper again, and as you can see that returns null. So what we want to do is we want to say there's another HTML node extension I've written. So we go return not template.node.element exists. That. So essentially what this is saying, this is the last web page, when the element we're using to get the next URL doesn't exist anymore, because by definition if there's no next URL then we must be on the last web page. So that's essentially it. That's going to give us the paging mechanism. I'll go ahead and finish this one up. So we'll just click on one here, just have a quick look around at a couple of them. So this is looking good. It gives us the title, description, and then we get some information here. So this is a fairly simple standard one. So let's go ahead and implement this. So we do the usual capture job. So we'll paste that bit in there, see if we can fill in as many of these as possible. So let's get the title to start with. It's an H2, so using XPath helper again, let's just see how many H2s there are. That's good, there's only one. So we can just use a simple H2 XPath node because there's only one H2 on there, and we want to use as little XPath as possible and as relative as possible, because sometimes web pages can be slightly different. So if you use like a numbered exact one, it might vary between the web pages. So using something which is as basically low level as that, and we should be good. So let's go and add this to the title using the extension method again. Try get node. Get the description. So this is a little bit different. So we use So if you can see what I did there, we go inspect element, that will bring up Google Chrome's document tree in here. When we highlight, so this is what we're interested in, this is the description box in here, we can see that's a paragraph node nested inside a div which has a class the content. So all we've done here is, first thing we do is we select the div element which has a class exactly called the content, and then we just want to select a paragraph because there is only one. That will give us the description. So the next bit, let's get the reference. So in here, the reference is nested within inside a table cell within a table row. So what we want to do for this one is we can use XPath to say, right, we know that it's within, if we know it's the second table cell within a table row that has a table cell with text job reference. So in this case, what we do is we say, right, we find a table row that contains a table cell whose text is equal to job reference. Then what we want to do is find the second table cell. So again, if you look what we've done here, we've basically said, okay, we know that job reference is the second table cell inside a table row who has a table cell whose text contains job reference. So you can see in here we've said, right, find me a table row that contains a table cell that contains the text exactly to job reference, which will so this XPath here will capture this table row, and from that table row we are interested in the second table cell. So we paste that in, and we could probably use this a couple of times. So the next one is salary, so we can just change that to say salary. As you can see that there. So let's copy and paste that in. got location.
As you said to me at tea time, I think tactics from this bar have been yesterday, because it just kept the game about the danger, as it were, trying to attack the start of the series too often. People do get set.
Then we have contract type, which is just basically, in this case, just says type. What happened there? Don't want that. Let's try and get that back again.
Let's go.
Contract type. What have we got?
197 now.
Oh, great. So we have this is good. This is some direct contact information. So we have the contact's phone number, we have the contact's name, and we also have the contact's email. So let's go ahead and post this up.
That's good cricket. Not great for Pakistan. They needed to have Moin on strike. Were thrown away that advantage. It's a lazy piece of fielder was pushed back. I don't know why.
Right, so first thing to do is we get the consultant's name.
He's off the mark now. He's on not for 15 balls.
So that's just basically a case of getting the in the text of this H element in here.
There's always a thing that whatever the captain tells the fielder or whatever it might be, you're allowed to think to yourself, well, read the situation.
Then what we want to do is we can see here that they're using a mail to link, which is their email. So let's go ahead and extract that out. So we can get we can use the try get link, which will get us the href attribute value, and then we can just replace any mail to colon with blank text, so it just gets this bit here. So let's go ahead and do that. So all we want to do in this case is we've used the consultant cell again here, but this time we're going directly down to the A element, because that's what we'll use to use the try get link method up here. So this is going to get us the link, or basically this is just shorthand again to get the href attribute from any element, which I mean really would only be an A element, and then we can just do replace mail to with an empty string. And then we have a last dated of 20th of October 2015. So unfortunately that was 10 months ago, but then that is the last page. So perhaps let's go to the first page, see how often they update their jobs. Okay, that's better, 3rd of August. So perhaps put that down. I'd imagine let's put that down in the date posted element. So
load scores for the county championship. Let's have a look. Hampshire, Lancashire.
Sorry,
Lancashire behind
that should be last updated.
9. This in during their first innings. Middlesex, Surrey. Surrey lead by 278. 6 down in their second innings. Somerset, Durham.
I think I must be pressing something because it keeps switching this around and stuff, so I'm not sure what's happening there.
36, that was a great result for Somerset there. And then York to Warwickshire. Warwickshire 133.5. Number 964, you might say that looks to be in favour of Yorkshire. But the Morgan Northamptonshire, Northampton won that by a distance from Northampton 95. Their second innings against Worcestershire, by 10 wickets. Again, comfortable win for them.
There we go.
More as well, Division 2. Essex lead by 12.
Okay, that's essentially it. Oh yeah, and of course, just to fill in, this is important, is to always fill in the website, which is it's just simply just basically the home page of where we're getting this from. Pretty simple there. Start date we don't have. Of course, job link should always. That's pretty simple. You just use the URL from the template. Job ID we don't have that for that. We have a reference though. Industry. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. I suppose we can have a quick look around on the home page. It might say whether it's accountancy or something. Let's close that down. So there we go, financial recruitment specialist, so or accountancy. So let's just put industry, accountancy, finance, company. No, this is a recruitment consultant. So recruiter is Abacus Consulting. So let's just write that in there. So that's pretty good actually. So all we're left with was a start date, a job ID, company and a closing date. So try not to get confused between job ID and reference. Job ID is sometimes it's a specific ID, you know, like it would be like a database ID or something. Sometimes they'll have that hidden in the HTML. So let's go ahead and run this. So as usual, we go to the program, pass that in there. Go ahead and run this.